college football did not skip a beat. We had 5 SEC schools win by 60-plus points. The ACC continued to struggle. We also had multiple Power 5 teams, including the number 3 team in the country, fighting for their lives against FCS schools, and so many more fun games. So let's talk about it. So first, let's talk about Clemson and Georgia. And this is unbelievable domination. I still don't know yet if it's Clemson is just bad or Georgia's good. It's probably a mix of both. Clemson didn't lose any or didn't gain any, like, offense, didn't gain anything from last year. It actually seemed to be worse. Georgia, they struggled in the first half offensively and then scored like 4 of their last 6 drives, 4 of their last 7 drives, something like that. Completely turned it on. I said Ohio State was the number 1 team in the country, but after today, I know it's one game and Ohio State played Akron, so they didn't really get to prove themselves too much, but I would probably put Georgia number 1 again. Clemson was the favorite into the ACC going to this game because of the Florida State loss, and they lost by 31 points. And now, in a game we'll talk about later, definitely there is a clear favorite in the ACC, and it is definitely Miami. And that, I think, is the biggest takeaway, is that Clemson may just not be that good, Florida State may not be good, and the ACC has lost, like, all of its contenders are losing. Next, let's talk about a game that honestly just lost so much aura. This game was so hyped going into it. I talked up this game so much, and it's not even the score. It's more the rain delay or the lightning delay, which started in halftime and then ended around, I don't even know, 4:30. I think it ended. I don't know. This game ended up being really shitty. Penn State dominated. I saw what I saw? I saw Penn State fans complaining about the refs. I didn't watch the second half. Because at the end, it was like half full. There was no energy. The entire game just died. And I saw Penn State fans being like, oh, the refs gave West Virginia 9 points. I'm thinking, dude, there was the most obvious freaking push-off at the end of the first half that paid Penn State points. So I think the refs were just bad this game. And then when you have the entire crowd in Morgantown just die because of that, like, a 2-hour lightning delay. Yeah, but Penn State looks really good. Their offense looked really dominated this game. Drew Aller was really good. Like, really, really good this game. The stats may not completely show it, kind of because he didn't throw the ball. 218 yards, 3 TDs. He just didn't throw the ball a lot. But if Penn State's offense plays like this, they're more than just a playoff contender. How about a game that ended up definitely being the biggest upset of yesterday? And I don't think anybody but Lee Corsos thought that. Like, this game also ended up probably being the game of the day too, maybe besides Notre Dame, Texas A&M. But Virginia Tech comes in here with a top 5 team in the ACC, or top 5, top 7, we'll say that. They come in here with ACC championship aspirations. They go to Vanderbilt, a stadium which literally half of it was Virginia Tech fans. You can just see a maroon and orange, and a half-finished stadium. And they got thrown around by Vanderbilt for half of it, and then they threw around Vanderbilt for a half, but then ends up Vanderbilt wins in overtime. Diego Pavia is really good. This Vanderbilt team is honestly, I don't even want to, like, Virginia Tech played bad, and it's not a good look for them, and I'll talk about that in a second. Vanderbilt looks really good. Diego Pavia was really, really good. He had he had like 300 total yards and 3 TDs. You can see the stats there. And it was an electric game. And it sucks that Vanderbilt's in the ACC or SEC, because I say they can do something, but in reality, they can still win 3 games this year. But for the Virginia Tech side of things, which I think is the more impactful thing, it's, again, how many... Let's say the top 7 ACC schools are the ones that, like, competing for whatever. Virginia Tech, SMU, NC State, Louisville, Miami, Clemson, Florida State. Those 7 teams. Florida State lost, Clemson lost, Virginia Tech lost. And then NC State played competitively with a FCS school. It's not a good look for the start of the ACC. They have all played terrible. And I said that these first 3 weeks are really important for the ACC, and they have not lived up to it, except for one team. Mentioned it in the Clemson thing. Again, Miami, when we talk about them, about to hype them up a lot. And how about Miami, man? With Clemson losing And with Florida State being 1-1 or 1-0 or 0-1, sorry, they haven't even played their game yet. I forgot they play Monday. Miami is, I think it's the ACC. There's Miami. It's a big gap now. They went into Florida and they just dominated. They dominated the line of scrimmage, which is huge for Miami especially. And Cam Ward dominated. I mean, he had that one pick, but he looked really, really, really good. Probably the best quarterback performance this week. I mean, some guys like Jackson Dart had like 430 yards and like 6 TDs, but that's versus Furman. So, there was really the line of scrimmage domination for Miami. That was the biggest thing. It's a line that can compete within any conference. Maybe not the high-end Big Ten teams, but it can compete in any conference, really. And especially in the ACC, they may run the table in the ACC. Maybe one loss, but I would think we're looking at an 11-1 and 12-0 team. They're that much better than the rest of the field. And in Florida, I don't think Billy Napier survives this year. I thought he had like a leash because of like a bigger leash because of their schedule and how hard their schedule was, and they went 4 wins. Like, they can still be 4 wins and still be like a top 35 team in the country. But 24 points at home to your rival, that's bad. Really, really, really bad. Merch played terrible too. The backup who they put in, don't even remember his name, played better. So, Miami, the contender in the ACC, the only truly good ACC team. And not even just as an ACC school. I think they're a really good team, like a top 12 team in the country anyway. I think they would be a playoff auto bid too. Now let's pivot to talk about the team with the second shortest odds to be the group of 5 representation in the playoffs, and that is Boise. Because this game was electric. I'll talk about their offense and then, actually no, let's talk about their defense. 45 points is shit. It could get you, their offense is definitely going to be good enough to win the Mountain West and make it to the playoffs. And they have Oregon next week, which was that matchup becomes really, really interesting, considering Oregon put up 24 points against Idaho. But 45 points, it's shit. But if you're a group of 5 team in the playoffs, you may not even care because you're going to let up a lot of points anyway. Might as well have your offense be good. I don't know. Maybe I'm just talking about ass here. But their offense, Alshon Gentry put up 20 carries for 267 yards and 6 touchdowns. Yeah. That stat line on its own is kind of why I wanted to talk about this game. But Boise, they definitely look like the best group of 5 team just based on putting up 56 points on the road across country too. So maybe I'm just gonna ignore the 45 points here. And I also say that because I'm not going to talk about the Liberty game, but Liberty struggled versus Campbell as well. I feel like I've used the term not skipping a beat a ton in this video, but it definitely applies more here than anybody else. Western Kentucky, to me, was a top 10 group of 5 team. They had a really good season last year, and in the past few years, they have been producing good quarterbacks, good seasons, top group of 5 teams, and I thought this year was no different. And I still couldn't think that way, too. And they come in here with TJ Flinley, who knows how to play Alabama, considering he was honestly one Tank Bigsby not going out of bounds away from doing that. On one ankle, too. He's on one ankle that game. And that was only 2 years ago. And he comes in here. Now, did I think Western Kentucky had any chance? Hell no. Hell no. But 63-0 is an absurd score. Ryan Williams is 17 years old, and he had a 84-yard touchdown and a 55-yard touchdown. Insane. Jalen Miller threw the ball 9 times and threw for 200 yards and 2 TDs. Or did I say 3 TDs? Oh, I guess 3 TDs. I know he had 2 on the ground, too. Insane. Alabama does not look any different. Actually, I'm not going to say they look better. But this is not like Furman. This is not Chattanooga. This is not Arkansas Pine Bluff. Who else? These SEC schools. Alabama A&M. These SEC teams who dominated. And those were the guys who put up 60 or won by 60 points. This was Western Kentucky. Like a good-ass CUSA team. Man, damn, Alabama looks good. And I'm going to talk about that. I was going to talk about the fall of Oregon in the poll later. But Alabama can jump in the polls because of this, too. All right, let's talk about the reigning national champions. And I didn't watch this game. I was pretty focused on Texas A&M Notre Dame, and I wasn't really flipping through games at that point. But what I read, what I was checking the scores, it is not the best performance for Michigan, but it's not the worst. And there's really only one reason I want to talk about it, and I'll mention that later. But Davis Warren, not good in his first start. Didn't even see that they named him the starter today. Thought it was Alex Orji the entire game until like after the game ended, and then I saw that, so kind of my bad. But I mean, they had 13 points of offense in 3 quarters, and then 23 points of offense overall. It's not great. Will Johnson did have the pick six to add to the score, but it wouldn't be too concerning because Fresno State is a good team, like we mentioned with Western Kentucky, and like they're a good group of 5 team. They're not gonna like get like blown out by these FCS schools or FBS schools or high-end FBS schools, I'll say, that much. But well, obviously Western Kentucky did, but Michigan has Texas next week, and that's the concern. Can the offense get up to speed? Because Texas, they looked really good offensively. They scored 52 points on Colorado State. Shut them out. Texas played amazing. Michigan played not great. And now they have to host Texas. I don't think they'll get blown out by Texas, but there is an ability for Texas to go in and just kill Michigan next week. They have to get the offense right, but like they have a week. There was like last year's schedule too. They would be playing UNLV and then Bowling Green, and then they would start the Big Ten stretch. That I wouldn't be concerned. I would say, okay, they could get up their offense up to speed. Now when you're going from Fresno State all the way to playing Texas, that is some concern, so we'll have to see how that matchup goes. And how about a matchup nobody thought anybody would even mention a word about, but Abilene Christian almost beat Texas Tech. I mean, they played the game. They went to overtime. They scored 51 points against them. I mean, Texas Tech, I don't think was ever going to be mentioned in anything, and I still don't think they will after, but I don't even know. I don't even know what to say about Texas Tech because I didn't have any expectations coming into this season for Texas Tech. But Abilene Christian, how many points? 45 points in regulation against Abilene Christian. This could be all I'm going to say on Texas Tech is that they can just end up being the bottom feeder of the Big 12. Because the Big 12, all the teams in the Big 12 played great this week. Except for West Virginia. And I don't know, Colorado didn't play great. But besides that, like even like the so-called bottom, no, Houston played terribly. Houston got like shut out by UNLV. Right, Houston's definitely a bottom feeder, but we knew that. And like some bottom feeders like Arizona State, they beat Wyoming by like 40 plus. So Texas Tech can just end up being in that bottom feeder realm of the Big 12. And how about the game? This was the most shocking score of the day. I meant Oregon. All right, let's rant. Let's have fun and let's rant. How the fuck are you going to go into the year with national championship aspirations, high-end aspirations? You have your big benefactor saying he's going to pledge all the NIL in the world to get you a national championship in his lifetime. You have a head coach who is top 3 in the country. You have a roster that is top 5 in the country. I don't care what 247 Sports says. I actually think they also have them at top 5. It is a top 5 roster in the country. It was a top 3 quarterback with the top wide receiving group with a good offensive line and a good defense. I'm in Oregon. You go to game day and 2 out of 5 people picked Oregon. 2 out of 5 most listened to college football people. Well, yeah, we'll just call them people. Said Oregon is good enough to win the national championship of every other team. And yet, Idaho comes in. Former FBS powerhouse, yeah. But Idaho comes in, you should blow them out by 40. And it is a 3-point game in the fourth quarter. A 3-point game. Dylan Gabriel threw the ball 49 times in a game versus Idaho. That can't happen. Your quarterback should not be throwing 49 times. You want to go to Penn State? Penn State, Drew Aller threw 17 times versus West Virginia. And Dylan Gabriel threw the ball 32 more times versus Idaho. It cannot happen. That cannot happen. You cannot play within 10 points of an FCS school as the number 3 team in the country. And I don't even think Idaho is a good FCS school. I don't know. I don't pay attention to fucking Idaho football. That's bad. That's bad. We'll see. I don't expect this to, like, Oregon to, like, be, like, now falling off and be, outside of the top 10 and miss the playoffs. I don't expect that. But that shit cannot happen. You can't play like that versus Ohio State. You can't play like that when you go to play Michigan. Hell, you can't even play like that when you play Boise State. Because they played like this versus Boise State, how they played today. They would have probably lost that game. So, and it looks like they even had a stripe out. You have a stripe out and lose. But, that's just bad. It's a really, really bad look for Oregon. And I don't know. I don't know how the polls are going to go. But and obviously the polls don't matter they don't matter at all. But with Texas winning by 52, with Alabama winning by 63, with Ole Miss winning by 76, with Notre Dame going to Texas A&M, I can see Oregon dropping to 7 or 8 in the polls. I think that can actually happen, which is crazy. But whatever. I'm big on Oregon. I'm high on Oregon this year. I had them going 12-0 in the regular season. I don't think. If they just get their shit together in like a week, which they can, they have the ability to. It's fine, like no love lost or whatever, but just bad. It's just really bad. And how about the final game? The final game I want to talk about ended up, I think, being the game of the day. I think it was the game of the week anyway. And that was Notre Dame going to Texas A&M. Now, this was known to be a not defensive shootout. Let's call it a defensive shootout, even though this is an oxymoron. Whatever. How about, I think Notre Dame, Texas A&M ended up being the game of the week, I think. Florida. So the aim that ended up being the game, though, Texas A&M Notre Dame ended up being the game in a week. It was a defensive struggle. That was what it was meant to be. The spread was 47, or the over under. There wasn't going to be a lot of points scored in this game, and there was even lower than that. There was 36 scored in total. So we'll talk about Texas A&M first. Connor Wigman, bad. He was awful. 12 for 30, 100 yards and 2 TDs. Awful. The offense looked terrible. They lost weapons, of course. They lost a lot in the transfer portal, but their roster was super talented. Elko's a really good coach, but their offense just looked bad. I was very high on Texas A&M this year. I had them beating Notre Dame. I had them beating Texas. They have all their hardest games at home. I was high on Texas A&M, maybe not as a playoff team, but maybe like a playoff dark horse, maybe a dark horse. But no, not that. I don't want to say this is Texas A&M at old, because it is a new era with Mike Elko, but they did not look good. They just didn't. And for Notre Dame, going into Kyle Field, like a top 10, top whatever you want to call it, top 5, top 10 atmosphere in the country. Opening day, game day, extremely hype in College Station. And they go in there and handle their business, and they win by double digits. Notre Dame could run the table. I said that now about Miami because I meant it. I did mean Miami can run the table, and I believe Notre Dame can run the table as well, because their schedule, they played their hardest game of the year. By far, I think, the hardest game of the year. The only other games are like Georgia Tech can give them trouble, Louisville can give them trouble, and at USC is really the only big one that they play, and that's in how many weeks, 14 weeks. That's their last game of the year, 13 weeks. So their defense is legit. Legit. Their secondary, obviously, was Benjamin Morrison, which is Xavier Watts. It was already thought to be the best secondary in college football, and they somehow outplayed that. It is by far, I don't want to say by far, but it is definitely 100% the best secondary in college football. And Riley Leonard, he didn't throw the ball amazingly, but as a runner, he's super legit as a runner. And their offense, it's 23 points doesn't look great, but their offense is good. Trust me, their offense is good. I don't think there's anything else to say. Like, Notre Dame is a playoff team. Notre Dame is a national championship contender, in my opinion, as well. So that's it. So that's it. I mean, we went over 10 games, which is, I don't even know. I want to do this every Sunday. So I don't know how it'll be with how many games to talk about, but we talked about 10. I think the FCS schools kind of added to that, but it was fun to get college football back. We have USC LSU today still, which is a huge game. That's later tonight. And then Florida State, we'll see what they are and if they're like not a good team or if they're just going to bounce back and say, oh, we were playing in Dublin. Oh, it's a whatever. And that's tomorrow. Thanks y'all for watching. Discord hopefully is coming out today. See ya.